At first there is only breath, not even breath exactly, more the sound of it, uneven, caught, as if the room itself is learning how to breathe again. Heat gathers where skin touches skin. A hand moves, stops, moves again, uncertain. There is a smell, soap, maybe, or laundry detergent warmed by a body. Someone exhales too close to the ear, and the sound makes something loosen and tighten at the same time. They are very still, except for the places they aren't. A knee presses into the mattress. Fabric wrinkles under fingers that don't quite know what they are asking for. There is a pause that feels longer than it is, a hesitation that hums between them like a held note. If one of them were to speak, everything would change. The thought passes through her, not in words, but as a faint alarm, and then passes again. She feels his breath hitch, the smallest interruption, and wonders if he feels hers doing the same. The closeness is almost too much, the warmth, the quiet insistence of being known without explanation. Something about it scares her, though she doesn't know why yet. Or maybe she does, and just doesn't want to. Later, much later, this moment will return to her in pieces, not as a whole memory, but as fragments. The sound of breathing, the weight of an arm, the way uncertainty felt like tenderness before it learned how to hurt. Weeks earlier, the morning had been so ordinary it almost escaped notice. Light came in through the window at a slant, catching dust in the air. She woke before him and lay still, listening to the familiar rhythm of his sleep. The room smelled faintly of coffee grounds from the night before, and something citrusy from the cleaner they used on Sundays. Her phone buzzed once on the bedside table. Nothing important, she decided without looking. She turned her head slightly and watched him. His hair fell into his eyes in a way that always made her want to reach out and fix it, though she rarely did. He slept with his mouth slightly open, one hand curled near his chest as if holding on to something invisible. The sight of him filled her with a quiet affection that felt almost like gratitude. This, she thought, this is enough. But there was something else too. A thin feeling, barely there, like a hairline crack in glass. She tried to locate it, the way you do with a new ache in your body, pressing gently, testing. Everything seemed fine. They had gone to bed without arguing. They had laughed the night before at a stupid video, her head tipped back against the couch, his laugh surprising her with its softness. Nothing was wrong. Still, she felt the urge to be careful, to move slowly, to not wake him yet. She slipped out of bed and padded to the kitchen, the floor cool under her feet. The kettle clicked on, loud in the quiet apartment. She leaned against the counter and let herself drift. Her thoughts were unremarkable. Work emails she needed to answer, the groceries they were out of, whether she should call her mother later. Ordinary thoughts, the kind that usually soothed her. When he came up behind her, she startled slightly. He pressed his forehead into the space between her shoulder blades, arms loose around her waist. She relaxed into him, smiling. "Morning," he said, voice rough. "Morning." They stood like that for a moment. The kettle whistled. She reached to turn it off, and his arms fell away easily. Too easily, maybe. She noticed the absence of his warmth more than the presence had startled her. They sat at the small table by the window, mugs between their hands. Outside, someone walked a dog. A car passed. Life continued, oblivious. "Did you sleep okay?" he asked. "Yeah, you?" That was it. The conversation didn't fail so much as drift. She sipped her coffee and told herself not to read into it. Silence wasn't a problem. Silence could be comfortable. They had always been good at sitting together without filling every space. Still, she found herself watching his face more closely than usual, as if looking for something she had misplaced. The argument, if it could be called that, happened a few days later, and it was so small she almost missed it. They were in the grocery store, standing in front of the shelves of cereal. He picked up a box she didn't like. She made a face. "You never eat that," she said. "I do sometimes." "When?" He shrugged. "Why does it matter?" She hadn't meant it to matter. She hadn't meant anything, really. The words had come out wrong, heavier than she intended. "I just thought we were getting things we both like." "We can get both," he said, already reaching for another box. She felt a flicker of irritation. Not at the cereal, not really. At the way he said it, like the solution was obvious and her concern unnecessary. Fine, she said too quickly. He glanced at her. What? Nothing. They finished shopping in a strange, polite quiet. At the checkout, she watched the items slide down the conveyor belt and wondered why her chest felt tight. It was ridiculous. She knew that. She told herself to let it go. But that night, lying in bed, the moment replayed itself. Not the words exactly, but the feeling of being slightly dismissed, of having something brushed aside. She wondered if he had felt it too, if it had lodged somewhere in him like it had in her. She considered bringing it up, then decided against it. It would sound petty. She didn't want to be that person, the one who made problems out of nothing. So she said nothing, and the silence did what it always did. It filled itself. There were good days still, many of them. They walked through the park one afternoon, leaves crunching underfoot. He told her a story about a coworker, embellishing it until she laughed, really laughed, the sound surprising both of them. He looked at her with a pleased expression, as if her laughter were something he had earned. God, I love that sound, he said. She felt warmth spread through her, quick and bright. She leaned into him as they walked, their steps falling into an easy rhythm. For a moment, the thin feeling vanished entirely. Later, much later, that laughter would come back to her at odd times, on a bus, in the shower, half asleep, and it would hurt in a way she couldn't explain. But then it was just laughter. It was just them. The misunderstanding began with a message she didn't send. She had typed it out, erased it, typed it again. Something simple. Are you okay? You seemed distant earlier. She stared at the words, thumb hovering over the screen. It sounded accusatory, she decided, or needy. She didn't want to start something over text. She put the phone down. When he came home later than usual, she was already in bed. He kissed her forehead, murmured an apology she barely heard. She pretended to be asleep, though she wasn't sure why. It felt easier than figuring out what to say. The next morning, he was quieter than usual. Not cold, exactly, just turned slightly inward, like someone listening to a sound only they could hear. She wondered if her silence the night before had registered, if it had landed somewhere tender. She almost said something then, almost reached across the table, touched his hand, asked him what was wrong. The moment passed, the day moved on. Silence, she was learning, could be misread as indifference, or worse, as judgment. Time began to do strange things. Days felt repetitive, but certain moments sharpened, standing out with uncomfortable clarity. She found herself replaying conversations, searching for missed cues, alternative endings. If she had said this instead of that, if she had asked one more question, if she had been braver, or quieter, or something else entirely. Forgiveness hovered at the edges of these thoughts, an abstract possibility. She believed in it, in theory. They had forgiven each other before for bigger things. But this felt different. There was nothing concrete to forgive, no single wound to tend. Just a series of small abrasions, each one easy to ignore, harder to heal. One night she tried to apologize. Not for anything specific, she couldn't name it, but for the distance she felt growing between them. I feel like I've been off lately, she said, staring at the sink as she washed dishes. I'm sorry if I've been weird. He leaned against the counter, watching her. You're not weird. I know, It's fine, he said, too quickly, really. She nodded, though the knot in her chest tightened. The apology hung between them, unfinished. She had offered it clumsily, without shape. He had accepted it without understanding, or maybe he had understood too well. And that was the problem. Years from now, she will think back to this time and struggle to explain when things began to change. There will be no clear line, no moment she can point to and say, there, that was it. Instead, there will be memories like this one, a morning that felt almost right, an argument about cereal, a message unsent. And there will be that first moment, the one that begins this story, waiting in the future of her memory, ready to be revisited, ready to be reinterpreted. At the time, she will not know what it costs. At the time, it will feel like closeness, like hope. For now, she lies beside him, listening to his breathing, and tells herself that love is patient. That time is on their side. that some things don't need to be said right away. The quiet answers her with its familiar, dangerous calm. She does not notice at first how tired she is becoming. It isn't the kind of tired that sleep fixes. It settles somewhere behind her eyes, in the slow drag of her thoughts. She starts to feel it in conversations, how much effort it takes to explain something that once felt instinctive. How she rehearses sentences before speaking, tries to anticipate where he might misunderstand, where she might sound sharper than she means. She tells herself this is normal. Relationships take work. Everyone says that. She has always believed it. But there is a difference. She is learning between work that builds and work that erodes. Another morning. Not identical to the last, but close enough to feel like a variation on a theme. She wakes before him again. The light is different this time, paler, the sky washed thin. For a moment, she doesn't remember why she feels heavy. Then it comes back, not as a thought, but as a bodily knowledge. The way her shoulders are already tense, the way she exhales carefully, as if afraid of waking something fragile. He shifts beside her, murmurs something she can't understand. She waits for the familiar swell of affection, and it does come, but muted, layered with something else, concern maybe, or caution. In the kitchen, the kettle clicks on. She leans against the counter and realizes she's counting things again. Days since their last argument, weeks since they last talked without circling something unspoken. She doesn't like that she's measuring time this way. It feels like evidence. When he joins her, there is a kiss on the cheek, brief, gentle, almost careful. "Busy day?" she asks. "Yeah, you?" "Same." They smile at each other, the smiles hold, then loosen. Nothing is wrong, nothing is right. The small argument that follows arrives quietly, disguised as logistics. They're talking about the weekend, whether to visit his friends, whether to stay in. She says she's tired. He says they already told them they'd come. "I didn't realize it was definite," she says. "I mentioned it," he replies. "When?" "Last week." She searches her memory. There is a blank space where the conversation should be. She feels a familiar heat rise, not quite anger, more like shame. "I don't remember that," she says. "Well, we talked about it." There it is again, that subtle implication, that if she doesn't remember, it's her fault, that the absence exists inside her, not between them. She opens her mouth, then closes it. She can already see how this will go, how she'll sound defensive, how he'll get frustrated, how they'll both end up apologizing for the wrong things. "Okay," she says instead, "we can go." He hesitates. "Are you sure?" She nods. He smiles, relieved. She returns it, though something in her tightens. The argument dissolves, unresolved, like sugar in water, sweetness without substance. Later, alone, she will replay it and realize this was the moment she felt something slip. Not dramatically, not all at once, but enough to notice. Like a grip loosening, unnoticed until the object is already falling. There are silences now that feel different from the old ones. Before, silence had been shared. It had felt like rest, like an understanding that didn't need words. Now, silence feels like avoidance, like a series of doors left gently closed. She catches herself wanting to ask, "Are you still in this?" The question frightens her. The fact that it exists frightens her more. One evening, they sit on opposite ends of the couch, both scrolling on their phones. A show plays in the background, neither of them really watching. She glances at him, notices the faint crease between his brows. "What are you thinking about?" she asks. He looks up, surprised. She nods, immediately sorry. She hadn't meant to interrogate. She hadn't meant to ask for proof of presence. But the word "nothing" echoes unpleasantly. She wonders when she started needing reassurance in this way. Wonders if he notices the change in her, if he resents it. Forgiveness, she thinks then, is not a single act, it is a muscle, and hers is tired. The memory of laughter returns one night, uninvited. She's brushing her teeth when it happens, the sound of it, sudden and vivid. Hers, loud and unguarded from that afternoon in the park. For a second, she feels the joy as sharply as she did then. Then it twists. She leans over the sink, gripping its edge, toothpaste dripping onto porcelain. The thought comes unbidden. Will we ever laugh like that again? The question feels disloyal. She rinses her mouth hard as if she can wash it away. In bed, she turns toward him, drawn by a need she doesn't fully understand. She presses her forehead to his shoulder. "Hey," she says softly. "Hey, I love you." There is a pause, not long but long enough to register. "I love you too," he says. She closes her eyes, tells herself not to measure pauses, tells herself love isn't always immediate. Still, the moment lingers in her chest, unresolved. The attempt to apologize comes on a Tuesday. She has been carrying it with her all day, the weight of it. At work, she misreads emails, forgets tasks. Her thoughts keep drifting back to him, to the way their conversations feel like walking through a room filled with fragile objects. That evening, she cooks dinner while he sits at the table, answering messages. The domesticity feels almost ironic, like they're playing at something they don't fully inhabit anymore. She sets the plates down, sits across from him. "Can I say something?" she asks. He looks up, "Of course." She inhales. "I think I've been holding on to things instead of talking about them, and I'm sorry if that's made things weird between us." He frowns slightly. "I didn't think things were weird." Her chest tightens. This is the problem, she wants to say, that they are not experiencing the same relationship. "Well," she says carefully, "I have." He leans back, arms crossing loosely, not defensive exactly, but closed. "Why didn't you say something sooner?" The question lands harder than she expects, because she didn't know how, because she was afraid, because she thought love meant patience. "I'm saying it now," she says instead. He exhales. "I just wish you wouldn't assume the worst." "I'm not assuming. It feels like you are." There it is, the familiar slide. Words turning into positions, positions hardening into distance. She pushes her food around her plate. The apology has shifted shape, become something else. She feels foolish, exposed. "Maybe we're just tired," she says finally. "Maybe that's all this is." He nods, relief evident. "Yeah, probably." The forgiveness almost happens then. She feels it hovering, possible, but it depends on something unspoken, something fragile. And when he doesn't ask her what she means, when he lets the conversation end there, it slips away. The moment of intimacy, the one she doesn't understand yet, comes weeks later. They have argued that evening, quietly, no raised voices, just a series of misunderstandings that stack on top of each other until both of them are exhausted. They go to bed without resolving it. In the dark, they turn toward each other, or maybe she turns first. It's hard to remember later who initiated it. There is warmth, breath, the familiar map of his body, slightly altered by distance. She feels him hesitate, feels herself hesitate too. For a second, she thinks they will stop, that one of them will say something honest, something dangerous. No one does. The closeness feels like relief, like reaching for something known in a room that has gone dark. It is tender, uncertain, almost reverent. She feels her own confusion as a physical thing, tight and bright in her chest. Afterward, they lie side by side, not touching. The air feels charged, unsettled. "Are we okay?" she asks into the dark. He doesn't answer right away. "I think so," he says eventually. The words soothe her, even as they leave something unresolved. She turns onto her side, facing away, and tells herself not to think too hard about what okay means. Years later, this moment will return to her, not as comfort, but as a question she never learned how to ask. The end does not come all at once. It arrives in increments, fewer shared jokes, longer silences, the quiet relief she feels when he leaves the room. She notices that she no longer reaches for him without thinking, that she weighs the cost of every conversation. One afternoon, walking home alone, she realizes she feels lighter without him beside her. The thought terrifies her. She stops on the sidewalk, heart racing, as if she has caught herself in a betrayal. That night, lying awake, she understands something she has been avoiding. Love has not disappeared, but it has changed shape. It is no longer enough to hold them together on its own. She does not know yet how the breakup will happen, only that something has already broken and that neither of them knows how to name it. Time keeps moving quietly, patiently, and it is not on their side. Part 3. The end announces itself in a voice she almost doesn't recognize as final. They are sitting at the small table by the window, the same one where they used to drink coffee on slow mornings. The light is different now, sharper, late afternoon, catching the edges of things, leaving the rest in shadow. She has come home already braced, though she isn't sure why. Her body knows before her mind allows it. He says her name. She looks up. "I don't think this is working," he says. The words are careful, practiced. They land softly, which somehow makes them heavier. She waits for the rest, for an explanation, for a narrowing, for anger. It doesn't come. Something inside her goes quiet, not empty, still full of feeling, but hushed, like a room after everyone has left. "Okay," she says, because the word rises automatically, because she has been preparing for it without admitting that she was. He exhales, a sound of relief that wounds her more than anger would have. She notes it with a strange clarity, as if storing it for later. As if she already knows this moment will be revisited again and again. They talk for a long time, or maybe they don't. Time behaves oddly, folding in on itself. She remembers fragments, his hands clasped together, the grain of the table under her fingertips, the way she feels both unbearably present and slightly removed from her own body. He says they've been circling the same problems. She agrees. He says he feels like they keep misunderstanding each other. She agrees again. Agreement comes easily now, too easily. "I still love you," he says, and his voice breaks just enough to make it believable. She believes him. That is the cruelest part. "So do I," she says. Love does not save them. It just sits there between them, useless and intact. After he leaves, later that evening, with a bag packed too quickly, she walks through the apartment as if it belongs to someone else. She touches the back of the chair where he used to sit, opens the refrigerator, closes it. The quiet is enormous. It presses against her ears until she feels slightly dizzy. She sits on the bed and stares at the place where he slept. The sheets are rumpled in a way that feels obscene now, evidence of a shared life that has ended without ceremony. She waits for something dramatic, for sobbing, for collapse. It doesn't happen right away. What comes instead is a dull, spreading ache, like the beginning of a bruise. That night she dreams of breath and warmth and not knowing what comes next. The first weeks after the breakup are shaped by absence. She wakes and reaches for him, her hand meeting cold space. She pours 2 cups of coffee before remembering. She still hears his laugh in her head when something is funny, still turns to tell him things. Grief arrives in waves, but not all of them are large. Some are so small she almost doesn't notice until she's already underwater. She runs into him once, accidentally, at the grocery store. They stand in front of the cereal again. The memory is so sharp she almost laughs. "Hey," he says. "Hey." They ask after each other. They smile. They are careful. "You look good," he says, and she knows he means, "You look okay." She nods, thanks him. When they part, she sits in her car for a long time, hands on the steering wheel, shaking. Forgiveness feels close then. Not forgiveness of him exactly, but of what they were, of what they couldn't do. It doesn't last. Time stretches, then it compresses. Months pass. She moves apartments, buys new furniture, learns new routes through the city. She meets people who don't know him, who don't know the version of her that loved him. The freedom feels strange, almost illicit. Sometimes she catches herself explaining less. Sometimes she misses explaining everything. She dates briefly. No one stays long. It isn't that she compares them to him, not consciously, but her body remembers a rhythm it doesn't find again. She wonders if that rhythm was unique, or if she has simply forgotten how to learn new ones. Certain memories soften with time, others sharpen. The morning light, the cereal aisle, the sound of her own laughter, and the moment of intimacy, the one that began this story, returns again and again. Now she understands it better. It wasn't reassurance. It wasn't healing. It was 2 people reaching for what they knew when language had failed them. It was love trying to speak in a body because it no longer knew how to speak in words. She forgives herself for that, eventually, for wanting closeness even as things fell apart. Forgiving him takes longer. Years later, she thinks of him less often, but when she does, the thoughts arrive fully formed, as if no time has passed at all. She hears a song they used to play in the kitchen and has to pull over. She smells the detergent he used and feels something twist unexpectedly in her chest.